Joining me this week is Martin Wagner, we think. Martin's on his way in, so I'm going to start without him. Welcome, everybody. We're sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. The ACA has weekly meetings every Sundays at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road, beginning around 11:30. This is a live public access telephone call-in program. See, I'm messing everything up. But we're glad you joined us this week, and we'll have the telephone number up for you shortly. That's not one of the screens that should be up there. Neither's that one. It's live. You guys who doubted this was live, we did all that. We planned all this ahead of time to prove it to you. We're so slick now. We've got new CG and HD cameras. These aren't screw-ups. They're demonstrations of technology. But, as I mentioned, we're a live call-in show. We'll have the number up for you in a little while. We're sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin. In addition to those morning meetings that happen on Sunday mornings, on the first Sunday of the month, we host a lecture series at the Austin History Center, located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe. This was the first Sunday of the month. It's July 6, 2008. And we had Professor Rory Coker from University of Texas come down and give a lecture on pseudoscience and non-science. We covered a lot of good things, which I may talk a little bit about today. If you missed out on the lecture, you missed out. And we'll be having another. Actually, I think I'm doing the August lecture, although I can't for the life of me remember what I was supposed to talk about. But we host that lecture series the first Sunday of every month, and they're open to the public. It's part of it's one of the many services the ACA provides. You don't have to be a member to come down. As I said, I'll be doing the August lecture, but the September lecture is the important one because we'll have Oak de Berg back to give a lecture on religion in the military. He did this before at I believe it was at our 10th anniversary celebration. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. And it was a good time, so we wanted to have him back to talk more about that. We'll have more details as we get closer to that. The audio portion of this program is available for download from our website, www.atheist-community.org, or you can go to www.atheist-experience.com. If you scroll down or if you click on the show archive link there and scroll down, you'll find the audio portions that are downloadable, as well as links to video episodes of the show available at Google Video. We can't host all of the audio, so we've been getting emails from people saying, "Hey, I've listened to every episode of the Atheist Experience." Wow, the show's been on for 10 or 11 years. Off and on. Some people actually have made it through all of them. We don't host all of the old episodes anymore. What we do is you can go and get an audio compilation CD from the website. There's more information on things like that there. All the downloads are available for free. The Google Video is available. In addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio podcast called The Nonprofits. That's PROPHETS. And you can go to www.nonprofitsradio.com for more information on that. That show is live every other Saturday from 2 to 3:30 p.m. roughly. We were off for about a month due to a lot of other commitments. We did a show, not this past Saturday, but the Saturday before, and it ran long. It's 3 or 4 guys sitting around and talking about current events from an atheist perspective. And so we're often prone to running long. And in this case, it was actually requested we go a little bit longer since we took a month off. So that program's up there now. We'll be live again this coming Saturday, 2 to 3:30 p.m. We don't take calls on that program, but we do run a chat service in conjunction with the show. For more information on how to connect that, you can go to nonprofitsradio.com. There's instructions there for connecting to the chat and how to connect to the live feed, as well as an opportunity to download the past episodes from the show. The ACA, being a nonprofit organization promoting separation of church and state and supporting the Atheist Community of Austin, in addition to our media outreach efforts in the Atheist Experience and Nonprofits and the lecture series, we host a number of other events, just social events for people in the atheist community to participate with, including happy hour every Thursday at the Dog and Duck, beginning at around 7 o'clock. That's at 17th and Guadalupe, and after this program's over, we get together for dinner, and this is a new week, or this being the new kind of dinner season for us. We've moved, and we're going to be going back to an old favorite, Threadgill's at 301 West Riverside Drive. You can Google it. Get a map down there. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to come to any of our events, unless there's like a private membership event. which we had the solstice party last month, which was a blast. Lots of karaoke and broken eardrums, but we had a good time, and it's one of the many things that we like to do. As I said, membership's not required. So this week, if you looked at the schedule, it was supposed to be Tracy Harris coming back to talk more about the Batman issue that she didn't get to completely cover last time, but something kind of major in the skeptic and atheist community happened in the past few weeks, and that was TAM 6, which TAM stands for The Amazing Meeting. This is the 6th one, hence, actually, it's technically the 7th, but there was one that was 5.5, I believe. It's put on by the James Randi Educational Foundation, the James the Amazing Randi, hence the name of the meeting. This, I believe, had close to 900 participants. It was over a weekend in Vegas. We talked a little bit about what went on there on the nonprofits. Martin, when he gets here, is going to talk a little bit more on this program about what specifically went on. There were a lot of good speakers. I didn't get to attend this one, although somebody did very graciously offer to give me their ticket to the event as they were injured, and I greatly appreciate it, but it was just too late notice, and I had to work and had other commitments at the time since I hadn't planned on going. But next year I'm hoping to go, and I think there's several of us from the Austin area, from the atheist community of Austin, who are thinking about going down there. It's a great opportunity to go down and hang out with fellow skeptics. Not necessarily everybody there is an atheist. This isn't an atheist convention, but there's a good focus spent on skepticism, critical thinking, science in the media, pseudoscience, and pseudoscience in the media, which seems to be running rampant. It's in Vegas. It was in June, and I'm assuming that next year's will be in June as well. Although there's talk about actually of doing one in the UK. I'm not sure if that rumor is true, but I've heard about it. So, and if you want to get through or if you don't want to get through on the telephone today, or if you're unable to get through once we put the number up, you can always email tv@atheist-community.org. That email goes to myself, the co-hosts, everybody behind the scenes, and we can't promise to answer every single one of them, but we answer a great many of them, and we definitely read all of them. So any feedback, questions, criticisms, concern, we've gotten email from around the world now that Google Video's up, and lots of good questions. Some of them which have been rolled into a feature in our newsletter. Some of them have been talked about on the show. Some of the corrections have been talked about. We'll probably talk more about those as they come in, because one of the things is I don't profess any expertise in anything at all. I'm not. I don't have 20 degrees, and I'm not extremely knowledgeable in some area in anything that would qualify as expertise. So I'm prone to making mistakes, and that's true whether we're talking about Big Bang cosmology or evolution or philosophy or religion. And it's one of the reasons that I try not to say, "Oh, you're such and such religion, so you believe this," because I would be silly. I'd be starting off with the potential of being completely wrong. It's much more beneficial if I say, "Okay, I don't care what label you put on it. Tell me what you believe and why you believe it." And then we can have a discussion about whether or not I agree with you, which may be the case. There are a number of people who consider themselves spiritual, which is a word I despise because I think it's useless, or religious in some non-conventional fashion. And when we really get down to brass tacks about what we're talking about, I agree with them. We had a letter come in that was basically saying, I don't want to use labels like that, but the individual was confused about, or not even confused. There's a concern about, if you trace a causal chain back, something had to start the whole universe. This is just the thing that makes the most sense to us. And not knowing what the answer is, and believing that humans have some limited form of communication and that there is a grander one, well, that's a claim that I don't think anybody has evidence for. I mean, it might be a nice idea to think that that there's some better, more universal or transcendent form of communication, some deeper way of knowing that we just don't seem to have access to, and that this is what religion tries to do in order to answer these tough questions. It's an interesting idea. I'm a huge fan of science fiction, and I don't say that in a way where I mean to belittle anybody's beliefs. I understand people are. I mean, this is a sincere quest. We're all on a quest to gain, hopefully, the best understanding we can about reality. And that's not always easy. And it's extremely uncomfortable to be faced with a question where the answer currently is, I don't know. But that's not a justification to insert some panacea answer that I can't think of anything, any way the universe could have come into existence, so therefore it makes sense to me that a God did it. I mean, because by definition, we all know that a God is something that could have created a universe. No. We don't know anything about a God. We've invented this label and all of its characteristics in order to solve the problem, and then stuck it in there to solve a problem. You can't answer a mystery with a mystery. And so while I find myself in agreement at a core level with some of the people who write in or call in who might identify themselves as spiritual or religious, I don't do that. On another level, I disagree with them. I think they're giving away too much ground. It's great and it's interesting to think about the possibilities of things that might be, but that doesn't mean they're true. And what I'm talking about is what I actually believe or disbelieve, what I think is true, what I think is not true. And so if you're one of the people out there who belong to some religion or are not part of a religion but think you have some insight or a view or believe things that you think we would reject, we'd love to have you call in and talk about it, explain what you believe, why you believe it. I'm open to discussions on this. And as a matter of fact, I'm fascinated by discussion on this. It's one of the reasons why I do the show. So without further ado, we have a special guest in the studio. Martin is here.
I made it.
You did make it.
I did make it. Right at the moment that I think everyone in Austin decided they were going to come home for 4th of July weekend at the same time. So it was a little bit nerve-wracking.
You know, if you'd actually just come to the lecture this morning.
Yeah. Had I done that, but ended up having, which I wanted to go to, and I'm very sorry I missed.
Well, we had a lot of fun at your expense while you weren't here, but now that you're here, we're of course grateful. This is Martin Wagner, everybody, somebody who used to host the show long before I was even an atheist.
That's kind of boggling to think about. I mean, that is really strange to think about.
It strikes me as odd every time I think about it.
Yeah.
So what have you got for, oh, by the way, I mentioned the email address. There's also a few things at the website, including a frequently asked questions page, where you can go to find out more about not just the ACA, but atheism in general, atheists, what do we believe, what do we not believe, why. But keep in mind that, as we said about 1 billion times on this show now, atheism isn't a dogma, it's not a worldview, it's not a philosophy, there are no tenets, there's no such thing as orthodox atheism, despite some people who'd like to use that label. There's no such thing as dogmatic atheism. It's simply a rejection of theistic claims. The only reason that there's a label for it is because these are important issues. I mean, if people were saying, I believe in Bigfoot, and Bigfoot wants me to make sure that, gay people can't marry, I'd have to call BS on that.
That would
and I would probably
be an interesting position for Bigfoot to take.
I know.
Just sort of like you have to.
Well, maybe we've encroached too much on Bigfoot's land.
Yeah.
He's trying to stop the spread of this virus of human beings.
Yeah, because it would, I think, somehow threaten his existence in some way, gay marriage, because that's what it does.
I would be Bigfoot's greatest enemy because I'm less hairy.
There is that, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what they're afraid of.
Right.
That was, by the way, one of the reasons I was a Christian for so long.
Oh, you were more hairy?
I was convinced that God made a few perfect heads and that the rest of them he put hair on.
Ah, well.
I later discovered that this was actually supposed to be a joke and was a flawed argument. And I got mad at God, and that's why I'm an atheist now.
Well, that all makes sense.
Sure, somebody will buy all of that.
Yeah, that's probably the best explanation I've heard yet.
So you went to TAM, and I already talked about it for like a minute while you weren't here.
I went to TAM, yeah. In fact, that's having overslept terribly this morning, so I thought, well, I'll just start and prepare and go through over all my notes and everything. TAM is, just to give everybody a brief who isn't really familiar with the whole thing, it's called The Amazing Meeting, and it's a convention, a conference that is now held annually and sponsored by the James Randi Educational Foundation. And so it's a skeptical conference, and I just wear the T-shirt today from the sort of, rub it in a little bit.
Yeah, if you drop the lower third, you can actually see that.
Yeah, well, I can just hack it up. works just as well. So while it's not strictly an atheist convention, pretty much the majority of the people there probably are, would identify as atheist and agnostic.
Yeah.
And I think Hal Bidlack, who sort of always serves as master of ceremonies, I think describes himself as deist. But for the most part, I mean, the bulk of the people who speak there and who attend are atheists, agnostics, skeptics. And the whole thing is just sort of designed as this great sort of central meeting place for a group of people, a huge community that I think never really realized it was a community before. Yeah. The notion of organizing atheists as just being an exercise in complete futility.
It's not only that, but it's a community that it's really kind of absurd that you would need to unite that kind of community.
It is.
We're talking about reality.
Yeah, it's sad that you have to sort of. There has to be this sort of
reality-based community.
Yeah, this counterbalance to this incredible majority of the human race that just believes in the most absurd notions and unfounded ideas. But apparently we have to. One of the speakers there. Quite a lot of speakers this year, and it keeps getting bigger every year. By the way, I think they just had over 900 attendees this year, upwards from just over 800 last year. From TAM 4 was maybe just over 600. So it keeps kind of spreading. And what was really great about it this year was when they did a show of hands at the beginning of the conference, should say, who's the first time, who are the first timers here? Most of those hands went up. So you had a whole bunch of people who weren't able to make it back this year, but a whole huge flock of folks who came for the very first time, and they still beat their attendance records from previous years, right. Which tells me that if all of the previous attendees had come, plus the newbies, you probably would have had 1,400 or 1,500 people in attendance. And I think that I've spoken to some people who have been to, say, American atheist conventions and various other atheist gatherings where they describe the mood as being kind of somber and dour. And I've never been to one of those. I've never been to the AA convention, so even the one they had here in San Antonio, but where I think...
There's one coming up here.
Yeah, the feeling was that just the fundies are running roughshod, and what can we do? And there's sometimes it can be a feeling of hopelessness. Sometimes in these strictly atheist gatherings, just there is it's a bit more upbeat at the JREF because a lot of it is it's not about really religion strictly speaking. It's about all manner of supernatural and superstitious beliefs. What the skeptics call the woo, and. So you have speakers ranging from guys like Michael Shermer, publisher of Skeptic Magazine. This year's keynote speech was Neil deGrasse Tyson, astrophysicist, who gave probably one of the most entertaining talks that I think any of us had seen in a long time. He called it Brain Droppings of a Skeptic, and he just went off on whatever random topic came into his mind. Having to do with everything from UFOs to religion to and it was fantastic. It was just so enjoyable and entertaining.
And I'm sure it was, and I've been a big fan of Tyson's for years. But to me, that's cheating.
I don't know. Well, the spontaneity of it was fantastic, though. I mean, that he could just and he worked the crowd like some sort of motivational speaker. He was just really excellent at it.
It's one of the things we don't do any real prep work for nonprofits. I mean, I don't. Mm-hmm. Dennis does a lot.
Right.
Hey, can we do that again?
What did we
that
just
was
do?
just really cool.
Oh, did they do a special?
They did an automatic auto camera move that. It did that. Do it again.
These are our.
Woo!
Goes right into Matt.
All right, we want big sweeping moves like that.
That's the anyway. That's the zoom in on Matt special feature that was programmed
especially for this episode
by Sony themselves.
But Dennis does a lot of work for the show.
Yeah.
And Thad brought in some stuff to talk about TAM 6.
Right.
Shilling will bring in news items and everything. Mm-hmm. I don't do anything.
Right.
And I guess what I kind of end up doing is, besides just talking a lot,
which is fine, fills up space.
Policing and shifting the conversation around. And that's one of the things that people like is it's not, and this show too, not necessarily scripted,
Yeah.
And so I can understand why a lot of people really felt great about the kind of speech that Neil deGrasse Tyson gave, because you got to really see somebody's kind of thought processes, I guess.
Yeah, there's that, and it's and you got to see that it's this great counter to this whole notion that skeptics are these sort of humorless, godless atheists who there's
yes, we have no fun at all.
Never, not once. But in addition to his little bit, which was really sort of extemporaneous, he had on the other end, you had Richard Wiseman, who is a scientist who actually investigates things like ESP and paranormal claims in England from a skeptical standpoint. He's a psychologist. And he did this fantastic stunt, which is probably on YouTube by now. You may have to search for it. But it was the world's largest spoon bending.
Yes.
Group spoon bending. Which, the whole Uri Geller thing where you kind of rub the spoon and it goes beep, and supposedly it's all telekinetic. When in fact what you do is you pre-stress the spoon by bending it back and forth a bit, which, oops, sorry, I wasn't supposed to give that trick away. But that's what you do. And, then when you're in front of the TV cameras in the audience, you can just kind of go beep, 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 plop. Oh, look, it fell apart. Sorry, no telekinesis involved, just a trick. Well, what Wiseman did as his little gag was he, did a thing on stage. And then what he did, they actually shipped these from England. I'm amazed they survived. 800 pre-stressed spoons. And they wheeled them out on carts and passed them down all the rows to all the people. And then he did this little thing on stage, and then his video camera panned out to everyone. Yeah. And he had this sort of synchronized little spiel that everyone gave in unison. Some people screwed it up, but that's kind of makes it even funnier. And everyone did the spoon bending. 800 people did the spoon bending at once. And it was just a riot.
Yep.
And
the video's up. I got to watch it yesterday.
Okay. So. Okay. Well, I'll try to find that, and I'll maybe post embedded on the AE blog so people can watch it because it's really funny. But it's all about how the brain sort of tricks you into thinking that things are happening that aren't really happening, and what it is that people notice. Some people have a knack for noticing certain things, and you don't notice other things, which is why the misdirection and the deception is so easy. A lot of times. He had another video that he played that's been up on YouTube for a while, which is his amazing color-changing card trick. Where it looks just like sort of your standard little card stunt where they flip a deck, where someone says, well, pick a card, and then you put it back in the deck, and then he does this little deal, and then when he reveals, oh, is this your card? And then he pulls it out, but now the entire deck, except for that card, the backs have all changed colors. They've gone from red cards to black on the backs. And you're watching that going, okay, well, it's a little card trick. But what you don't realize, or what a lot of people don't realize, some do, it all depends on how you notice these things, is that the entire trick it's like two people sitting at a table, him and his assistant, and it's all done in one take with sort of zoom-ins to certain details at certain points. They'll go into him, then to his assistant, then to the surface of the table. And while all these zoom-ins are taking place, stuff's happening off camera, like the girl's changing her shirt, and they're changing the color of the backdrop here from, I think, blue to green or whatever. And they even pull the tablecloth off. They'll go into a close-up of Wiseman, and the whole tablecloth gets ripped off to reveal a different color tablecloth beneath that. And these are the things that a lot of people watching the video, I watched it I didn't notice. At one point I noticed, I thought there was something strange about the girl's shirt. I thought this video looks like she's wearing some kind of Star Trek shirt or something. What's the deal with that? But it didn't. But most of the people watching that video don't get that while this fairly lame conventional card trick is going on, everything in the environment that you're seeing is changing and you're not getting it. And that's an aspect of, I think, psychology that Wiseman finds fascinating, and I think it's how a lot of these the woo crowd is able to, well, certainly it's how stage magicians work.
Yeah, but and there's kind of an interesting problem with that too, in that there are some things that you can change because the way our brain works and processes the picture, some things are less important than another. I mean, if we panned over to Martin and came back to me and I kept on talking and I had this huge clown multicolored wig on, everybody's going to notice that because it's a dramatic change that is, my face is hopefully where you're looking and you're not, staring at a blue blank background. Ignore me. There are a number of times where magicians have incorporated outfit changes into their act, where you'll have, they put the magician in a box, they close the box, the assistant gets up on top, and she's wearing, a red outfit, and she raises the curtain, it drops real quick, the magician's up there, he opens the box, and she steps out, and she's got, a white outfit on. Now, there's a couple of problems with this. One, there's a significant portion of the population that don't notice that in addition to changing places, she changed outfits. It's just, oh, yeah, there's the girl. The other thing is that some of them who do notice say, oh, well, it's just a different girl. I mean, they brought a different, And so it kind of, it's almost there, I have to think, specifically to entertain magicians who already know the trick, and go, yeah, she did a good, suit change or whatever else. But I mean, there are things that we just don't notice all the time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Wiseman, I think, did a similar little gag, I think, 2 years ago at TAM, which I didn't attend, where he sort of, he was in the middle of a spiel, and he popped off stage for a second, said, I'll be right back, I'm going to get something, and then Phil Plait came on, it was wearing the same outfit. They look very similar. Phil's a little taller, but they're both like these bald guys with glasses, right?
Yeah.
And it was like a minute before someone was like, hey, that's Phil Plait, and it just brought the house down. So, and Phil came out acting like Richard with his hilarious accent and all the rest of it. So, a lot of this sort of misdirection and sort of, messing with your mind thing, of course, this is what stage magicians do to make their living. But the message is that this is what a lot of these, the woo practitioners do. The people out there who are really trying to, people like, Uri Geller, of course, and then there's the cold reading that the folks like John Edward, who is appearing, I think, this month at the same hotel where TAM was held. That's what they do. And there are lots of photos from TAM of people kind of being rude to the posters of John Edwards posted up all over the hotel. So you get a large variety of speakers that go on talking about all manner of different stuff. Not everybody's as good as everyone else. Some people are very natural in front of a big group of folks. Some other people are maybe a little bit not used to public speaking in big groups. But they're still interesting all the same. There's the fellow who helped Randy exposed Peter Popoff, the televangelist, the faith healer, who really raked in a whole lot of money in the 80s, doing his...
And is back at it again.
Making more than ever before. This is kind of the depressing one. Essentially what Peter Popoff did was he was this guy who did the kind of the whole Benny Hinn routine. He didn't bring him up on stage. He would go out in the crowd. He'd go into the crowd and find folks and goes, where's Louise, from... West Virginia, and people would be like, "Ooh, he knows all this stuff about me." Well, he's got a bud in his ear, and he's getting transmissions from his wife, who's behind stage, because before his little evangelical rally, his faith healing performance, they would fill out cards. The attendees would fill out cards, and then his wife, Peter Popoff's wife, will go out into the crowds and just socialize with folks. Hi, where are you from? So what's wrong? And just get to and the conversations that she was having before the rally with those people were being transmitted to folks behind the stage who were writing this information down.
Right.
And so what Randy and his team did was they got in and with this sort of surveillance equipment, pegged the frequency and recorded it. And then Randy went on Johnny Carson, who was a fantastic supporter of skepticism. And you're not going to see his like on commercial television ever again, I don't think, in terms of supporting that kind of thing. And what's depressing, though, is that, it took the wind out of Peter Popoff's sails for a little while, and then he kind of came back. And whereas in the 80s, at the time he was exposed, he was racking in something like $11, $12 million a year. Now he's up to $24 million a year and doing the same crap. So people just don't learn. It's this really sick and depressing exploitation of hope and insecurity and sadness that these religious vultures prey upon. That is, it just kind of makes you just kind of go, wow.
The thing is that if nobody else were doing this, and you expose Peter Popoff, despite the fact that the people tend to have short memory, I don't think he could have built back up again. The reason he's been able to rebuild his ministry and come back stronger than ever is because what he's doing is playing on things that people already believe and other people are doing. So religion has within it already pre-built in this mechanism of forgiveness, for one thing. Which is, I can't count the number of televangelists we've seen, getting caught, busted with, hookers and drug dealers and whatever. And then come on and, turn on the waterworks like crazy. Then they disappear for a little while, and then they work their way back. And God has healed me from the former asshat that I used to be. And now I'm a true man of God, which means I need even more of your money.
God has forgiven me.
God,
in this case,
his ministry may not be doing quite as well. I think I think we'd have to adjust the dollars.
No, they showed his taxes for last year.
No, but I mean $11 million in 80 versus.
Oh well, I mean, if you count for inflation and what have you, but still, $24 million is more than. Right?
It's more than I make.
Yeah, it's more than he should.
It's more than everybody in this building makes together.
Well, it's $24 million more than he should be making.
Yes.
I mean, he should be working.
But I mean, it's
selling insurance somewhere.
It's one of the problems. One of the reasons why we do this. Not just to. It's not like I'm out to steal away hope from people or take away their religious belief. Would I prefer that people relinquished superstition and religious beliefs in favor of a reality-based worldview? You betcha.
Yeah.
And I'll do everything I can to encourage that.
Because people say that a lot to skeptics. They're like, well, why do you want to take away people's hope?
Yeah.
And it's like, think about what you're saying for a minute. What sort of hope is false hope? What sort of hope is just a bunch of lies, comforting lies that have been built on? Because all that happens is, the more that you build up, then when reality really hits you, the fall is that much harder. Now, and I've talked to other, atheist friends of mine, and they don't necessarily agree that that's strictly the case, and I see they have a point. I mean, if you look at something like religious beliefs or superstitions as, say, a big house of toothpicks, and reality is this thing that comes along and just keeps poking holes in the house of toothpicks. Well, what the usual believer does is just pile on more toothpicks. Ultimately, though, I think for a lot of people, you run out of toothpicks. And the choice then is either, well, you just have this house of toothpicks full of holes and that you're clinging to, for some reason, or I don't want to, strain this metaphor beyond the breaking point, but I think that it's just...
I wish I had a toothpick.
Weird that... that was just so completely random a statement.
I like turtles.
All right. So the contest for this episode is come up with, write your own folk song saying, I wish I had a toothpick from Matt. And next week on the show, we'll play it.
Yes. I'm toothpick free. By the way, the telephone number's up on your screen now. You can call it at any time to talk about this or whatever else you want to talk about. As I mentioned before, specifically, if you've got some particular belief or if you think that, I don't know. Atheists have
but while we're waiting for the calls to rack up, I do want to say just if you're an atheist or an unbeliever, skeptic, what have you, this is absolutely something to go to. I mean, just for first off, the parties are beyond belief, but so it's a wonderful social.
Evidently, there was a very popular drink whose name we won't say on today's show, just that we don't. Blow our chances of being shown in the afternoon.
Oh, yeah.
But all I kept hearing was how everybody kept drinking these, and I don't know, I'm not sure how they remembered the name of it. But
Yeah. I heard about it. I think I kind of avoided that. I think it may have, I'm not sure if that was being sort of passed around at the skeptic party right around the time that the Caesar's Palace, the security broke the party up because it was too cramped and too loud. I fled that party a little bit before, just because the room was such a sauna. This big hotel suite, but there was something like 300 people in it, and you literally couldn't breathe. It was so hot. So myself and my little entourage, we kind of skipped out, and then I think at that point was when they got shut down. So I don't know if everybody had just been, guzzling those, but it's entirely possible. But just in addition to all of that fun, just as a way to go and meet a bunch of just fellows from around the world. Everywhere. And this is when I have to give my hello and my shout out to the Australians.
And I did that last week on
Yes, Alan and Lloyd and Rachel, the ultimate fangirl, were there, and they were fantastic. We hung out the whole time. They're great, biggest AE fans ever in Australia. And this is still what boggles me. Ever since when I was host, 4 years ago when I left the show, it was we weren't on Google and YouTube, and the internet really wasn't doing what it was doing now, and just all these viewers and from around the world just didn't exist at that time. You might get like one email every 6 weeks from some local guy, but now it's back on the TV mailing list, and it's just being bombarded with fan letters from people like hi, I'm in Finland. I'm like, but it was fantastic meeting the Australians, and I look forward to seeing them again next year. But just to go and meet, just prominent names in the skeptical community. I talked to PZ a lot, PZ Myers and Feringula blog. Phil Plate, Mike Shermer, and James Randi, who's the most, just sweetest, most approachable little guy you could ever meet. It's an expensive little vacation, but completely worth it. So I would just say start saving now, because it'll be one that you don't want to miss. And it's just a great way to sort of boost your morale as a skeptic, to make you really want to get out there and tell folks, look, this is why it's important.
Well, one of the questions that we get a lot is
skeptical
why would you guys do? I mean, why would you have an atheist group? Because they're thinking in the mindset that this is kind of like church. On some level, it may be, because really we're all social creatures, and some of us appreciate company more than others. But being around people who you genuinely like, who you want to share ideas with, have conversations with, share experiences with, have a dinner with, go out on the lake.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, in that sense, if that's all church is to you, cool, keep on going. And in that case, yeah, welcome to the first atheist church of Austin. But if you're talking about it as a raw substitute for Sunday morning worship, it's a substitute with no worship at all of anything.
Yeah.
I know you've got one other thing that we want to talk about a little bit, but there's one caller on the...
Oh, yeah. I can be sort of
that we
going
can-
back and forth between the calls, talking
Yeah.
about different things that went on at TAM that I thought was interesting. But
So we got, is it John?
Hi, you there?
Hello, John?
Hello,
Hi, you're
Can
on.
you hear us?
you there?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine.
I'm holding on to the TV set, I believe.
You
I believe I saw an article in the paper this morning about heaven and hell
Okay.
Did you?
that the Pew Research Group took. Did you see it or read it?
I didn't read this morning's paper. You know who wrote it?
It's just an article in the paper about Michael Paisden of the Boston Globe wrote it. It's a review of this survey, and it essentially says 78% of the people believe in heaven, and 59% believe in hell. Now, I don't know statistics very well, so I don't understand the gap here.
Well,
overlap.
inconsistencies in religious belief, what a surprise.
And another thing in the tail end, and I'll shut up and wait for your answer.
Okay.
They made a big deal about whether God is good or whether he's revengeful, about the punishment, why bad things happen. They made a big deal out of that. So anyway, go ahead. I enjoy your show, and
Thanks.
I just got back from Roswell to the spook convention. No, go ahead.
Thanks a lot, John. Appreciate it. Yeah, I didn't actually read the Statesman article this morning, but I did see the Pew report. There's a lot of interesting data coming out of this. One, if you take your statistics about how many believe in heaven versus how many believe in hell, I'd say that in addition to the gap, I bet if you went to those people who believed in hell, none of them think they're going.
Yeah, there's...
We tend to kind of, I don't want to oversimplify things and say, because I don't believe that we choose our beliefs. I believe you're either convinced of something or you're not. However, your personal likes, dislikes, preferences, those do color the process you use to decide whether or not a claim is believable or not. And so the idea that you would be rewarded with some kind of pleasant afterlife is incredibly appealing. And the idea that you might be punished is not so appealing. However, it's appealing that someone else might be punished for wronging you.
Somebody, all them liberals.
Yeah, that may explain the disparity. Also, I was getting a note that 70% of Americans believe that there are multiple paths to heaven. And, you know, I don't know why
the
anybody
fundamentalists
thinks
will
there's
not
a
be
heaven in
happy
the
to
first
hear
place.
that.
Yeah.
Well, there's because, like you just said, they want there to be one, right? I think that I would. Maybe this is just sort of a difference in the slight semantic details, but I think that to the degree that preferences, as you said, play a role, I think people do choose what they believe, whether or not their beliefs are entirely sincere, like whether or not you actually got them behind the eight ball and they had to
that's what I'm talking about.
put what they believe into practice. I think most people claim to believe certainly a great many things solely for the reason that those beliefs provide them some kind of emotional security blanket.
I think they can choose to claim a belief.
Yeah.
I think they can choose to act as if they believe something.
Yeah.
But when you get down to brass tacks about whether or not you actually
really believe it is-
I don't think that's choice based.
Yeah,
And I
and
don't think
unfortunately,
people
we live
necessarily
in a very comfortable culture that I think allows people never to have to be sort of put in that position of really think, well, do I really believe this?
Plus, you've got something you can't prove me wrong.
Yeah.
I'm secure in my beliefs because you can't prove me wrong.
Sure. So there's that coupled with the fact that no one's taught critical thinking in our culture, in our educational system. It's just about everyone's scientifically illiterate. This was one of the more, I think, disturbing and bleak talks at TAM. We had Sharon Begley from Newsweek. One of the things that was kind of interesting about this TAM is that the theme is ostensibly skepticism in the internet age. And yet very, very few of the speakers actually focused on that. There really wasn't a whole lot about, even PZ when he got up, who's like the top science blogger just about. And he didn't talk about his experiences as a big atheist blogger. He gave an Evo Devo lecture. It was like being in his biology class. Interesting. But, he sort of got up and he prefaced it with saying, well, I bet you're all expecting me to eviscerate some Christian, and no, sorry. And he just gave a straightforward science lecture. So very people focused on the theme. But Sharon Begley from Newsweek actually gave a talk that may have been more appropriate even at last year's TAM, where the theme was skepticism in the media. And she essentially showed a whole bunch of figures pointing out, well, here's the problem. Most Americans are pathetically scientifically illiterate. And don't expect the mass media or the news media or whatever you want to however you want to phrase it, to come to the rescue in terms of thinking, yes, well, it's in people's interests that we make sure that they're all right, that we all have the facts here, and correcting people's really, really bad lack of skepticism and tendency to believe just the most pathetic rubbish. And so that kind of was very sobering. It sort of showed us all just how far we have to go. I mean, something like maybe nearly 20% of American adults still think the sun revolves around the earth. I mean, that's just when you want to, sink your face in your hands. So until we sort out science education in this country, I think that we're not only going to have a problem just with that, people being really, really stupid about basic facts at a basic level, but we're running a risk of falling very, very, very far behind the rest of the world in terms of, the 20th century was the American century. The 21st century probably will not be if we're no longer the leaders in science.
I think I have a potential solution.
And that is, do tell.
I remember when I was in school, I don't know whether it was an English lit class or just, I don't even remember what labels they put on it. My school was rather abysmal, but you had these books that you were required to read and then report on. Mm-hmm. And you had, whether it was Huckleberry Finn or The Scarlet Letter or whatever classics. Let's replace one of those. Mm-hmm. And let's make Carl Sagan's The Demon Haunted World required reading for every kid. At least they'll get some introduction into the beauty of science, the usefulness of critical thinking, the responsible skepticism that should be expected of all of us. Mm-hmm. And it is, in fact, a great book. Well written. It's an enjoyable read. So why not make the required? I mean, Scarlet Letter's okay. I got one on my sleeve.
Melodramas, yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, that's a start. We another speaker from TAM, Richard Saunders, who is
Suspenders.
Yes, Suspender Man from Australia, Australian skeptics. He demonstrated this thing. He does a thing where he actually goes around to these grade schools and does a dowsing demonstration. He'll get and at TAM he had a bunch of, and this actually was something I was very happy about. Quite a few people there in attendance who were teachers. He had a bunch of teachers come up and he did his little dowsing demonstration where it's just very simple. You've got 5 plastic buckets and under one is a thing of water. Oh, which one is it? And so let's see if our dowsing rod can find it. And it's all just, if you know where it is, then you'll just sort of do it, right? And but it's not a thing. If you suddenly make the guy turn around and close his eyes, and then you sort of do the little, shell game deal, then it's not quite so reliable. And that's just a very, very simple way to communicate to kids. It's just a primer. Get them realizing, maybe I should think about these things that I keep hearing, like the crop circles and the dowsing and the what have you. So
today's lecture actually kind of dovetails into that nicely, because one of the things that Professor Coker was talking about was he's not a parent or a grandparent or anything, but how can parents and grandparents get their kids involved with this? And there were a number of really good ideas that he did as fun projects. And he started with, let's say, UFO pictures. And he won't allow digital cameras for the project. But if you took a regular film camera, make it as a project. We're going to try and create the most realistic that's not even the right word now that I think about it, but the most convincing UFO photograph that we can with just a camera and things around the house. You know, whether it be chucking a hubcap up in the sky.
Which is the easiest way to do it.
Yeah. And do the same thing, and do the same thing for, like, you know, Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, ghost pictures, you know, things like that, projects that you can get kids involved in that are fun, that teach them something, and that build critical thinking skills. And so that maybe, even if this isn't something that they greatly enjoy, or that they, you know, run off to become a debunker or scientist or whatever, maybe when somebody comes up to them in their teens or 20s or 30s or 80s with a photograph to try and have them buy into some kind of, you know, oh, look at this picture of ghosts, you know, oh, that's not ghosts, that's those orb things are just a reflection.
I can think of another way to take that experiment to the next step that will really kind of hammer that message home, which is after you've had the classroom of kids do all of their fun little fake photographs, do something like go to a shopping mall and you know, set up a little display or something and just ask passersby, okay, do you think this is real? You know, or which of these, here are 5 UFO photographs, which is the fake one? You know, without them knowing that they're all fake. You know, but there's which is the fake one, right? Now that may be a little bit leading, but, you know, still a person who sort of knew what he was doing would be like, well, I think they're all fake, you know, or someone might be, you know. Something like that, or and then get the kids understanding, oh, wait a minute, it's really easy to fool just your average person.
Yeah, I think it's one of the
because I
reasons.
know that my photo's fake, and yet this person thinks it's real.
One of the things you find across the board in the skeptic community, in the atheist community, and we talked about this before, magicians. All over the damn place.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Rory Coker worked on some effects and wrote some books magic related. I've done it. You had Penn and Teller and Jamie and Swiss
Penn and
and
Teller
James
there,
Randi and Wiseman and all of these people who
Banachek.
are professional or amateur magicians who were brought up with an interest in learning to fool people and began to really see how easily we can fool basically ourselves. I won't go into too much detail on it, but it's one of the things that I've been working on for another lecture. But we fool ourselves all the time. Wiseman's demonstration about how observant we are, the things that we miss, the changing color of the background, etc. That's a good example. People are like, oh, you know, magicians. And magicians are incredibly, the good ones, precise, almost OCD anal people when it comes to plotting out the movements, whether even just simple hand movements. There needs to be a reason for it. It needs to be done in this particular way.
Oh, yeah, you have to do that. Because
and it's not so much that they're trying to find a way to fool you. They're trying to find a way to do something where you can fool yourself.
Right.
To where an action that looks normal, draws no suspicion, and actually does, you know, something.
Right.
devious.
I mean, if you don't have sort of the willing mark, as it were, it's not going to come off.
Right.
And so first what you have to do is bypass maybe whatever minute latent skepticism that person will have, win their confidence over, but then completely control their attention to such a degree that you can literally do things right in front of their faces and they won't notice it. But the only way you can do that is if they make the choice to say, okay, I trust this, or at least I'm interested. I know this guy's a stage magician, so I know he's going to do tricks to me, but this is interesting, and so I'm going to follow along.
That's the part that I find
cool.
most interesting, is that people will go to a magic show knowing that the guys are intentionally trying to deceive you and will walk out just completely baffled. And some of them, as bad as this sounds, will walk out actually believing that this person has done something supernatural.
Yeah, that's a little alarming.
Yeah, you know, I'm not great, and I haven't been doing things, you know, really in years, but I remember, no kidding, there were times in the Navy where I'd be sitting around doing a card trick, and I'd do one that was not like a pick a card, find a card, but more of a visual, kind of shocking, something that looked like what we would imagine real magic, which is a bad term too, to look like. And I literally had guys say, you're the devil, and walk out. And it's like, you know, okay, I'm not going to show you how I do it.
And you're in the Navy, so these men are defending our nation, and they have high-powered weapons.
Yeah.
And they're okay.
And yet they're, you know, but, you know, we've got pilots who step onto planes, or won't step onto planes, without their Lucky Charms. And I'm not talking about the breakfast cereal.
Yeah, well, that Lucky Charm will do a real lot of good if they get a sort of heat-seeking air-to-air missile at their ass. Yeah. So anyway, but you're right about that. It's the misdirection has to be precise, and I have a really good, one of my old high school buddies does close-up magic, like Jamie and Swiss does, and I remember being back at home. This was when I was married, and I was sitting. He was doing a trick for my wife. She's sitting right next to me on the sofa, and he was literally as close to her as I am to you. And he's doing this routine with just, I think, some doodad, maybe like a ring that she had or something. He gave her to do the, and he made the whole thing disappear with the da-da. And but he has her attention completely under his control. She doesn't realize this, so she's entirely watching the hand that's supposedly doing the trick. Now, after making the ring disappear, which is, I think the usual French drop or what have you, where it's in this hand, not that one, this sort of thing. What he does while he's talking to her and he's giving her the spiel, he takes his other hand and he literally lobs the ring over her head, over my head, and it lands on the sofa behind both of us. Now, I see all this because he's not doing the trick for me. He's doing it for her. She never notices, not once. It's a pretty flamboyant, it's a lob, right? You can't. But he does this right in front of her. She never notices. So I take the ring myself. I think, well, I'll play along. And I put it in my shirt pocket. And he says, now I'm going to make that ring reappear in Martin's pocket. And I pull it out. And she was just like, bleh. She never was, but just that much control to where they can be that close to you and manipulating you. So, yeah, if once you realize what's going on, is it any surprise that, people with even more insidious motives, like the Peter Popoffs of the world, and the Benny Hinns, and the evangelists, and the people out there, say in India, who are trying to play like we're God-men, and we do all these healings and what have you.
I can knock you over with my chi and the taser that I've secretly hidden up my sleeve.
When you take people's, how easy it is to manipulate folks psychologically, their attention, you marry that to an audience that is primed to be deceived. Or not to be deceived, but just to have a certain desire met, an emotional need or a psychological desire met. And now you're getting into, say, Sylvia Browne territory, where what she does is so obviously fake and egregiously manipulative, but you have an incredibly emotionally vulnerable person. They may, again, between what they really believe and what they're just saying they believe to sort of hide behind a security blanket, as it were. The point is they want to believe that their dead mother is trying to talk to them. They want to believe that their dead child is happy in heaven with God or whatever. And so at that point, it is just so easy for some sick vulture like these Sylvia Brownes and John Edwards to just play on that. And you might say, well, it doesn't do any harm. She made the woman happy. And I'm like, no. No, that's just pure exploitation. And that doesn't help the emotional healing process.
If you don't think there's anything wrong with it, let's pretend for a minute, and I realize, okay, some things are separated by time, but let's say that your parent just died, and some nasty crone comes walking up to you at the funeral and tells you that, I just got a message from your parent. They wanted me to tell you that they love you. This type of thing happens at some funerals I've been to where somebody is offering their platitudes.
Why are they contacting you and not me?
And why don't they say something useful? I already knew my parents loved me. I know they're dead. Why did they come to you, and why didn't they give you anything useful? And why would you come to me with something like that? At a point where I'm grieving, these people, these psychics who pretend to talk to dead people, they're taking people's emotions and screwing them up and implanting basically false memories to some degree.
They're vultures, and they do it for fame and they do it for money. That's what Sylvia's about. You get something, you pay her something like $750 for a 20-minute phone reading.
Yeah.
And
a 20-minute phone.
And that's a sickening thing. It's just exploiting the emotions, for monetary gain, really.
Well, we got to hold that thought for a second.
Yeah, because
Sue's actually been waiting for a while. And I also wanted to remind people that we will be going to Threadgills after the show.
Yay.
We're on for another 35 minutes or so. We'll have the number up again, but any atheist, racist, friendly person's welcome to join us. If you're coming down to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't. How you doing, Sue?
Hi, guys. How you doing?
We're good. Thanks for waiting.
Well, it was probably a good thing because when I called, I really wanted to say hi to Martin because it's been so long since I've seen you.
It has.
And
been
I've
a long time.
always enjoyed your presence on this show.
Thank you. I almost didn't make it today. It was touch and go for a second, but.
Well, I'm glad you did. It's been, I've been watching as long as this show's been on, I think. And it's gone through an interesting evolution. What do you think about new graphics and stuff?
I know, isn't that slick? They're
No,
kind of partially broken, but I like them.
behind you. But anyway, while you were talking, I got to thinking about some things. One of which is, I can believe there are many gods if, and there's a big if with a big I and a big F, like the Lord God of Abraham, all of the other gods, Baal, all of them are really just like the God in the 300.
In what?
A really big guy, a great show, lots of presentation, and a booming voice. Because they're professing, I am a God. And therefore, okay, they
like
could
the
be a God.
Spartans?
As far as them having anything to do with creation, the world, whatever. No,
Right.
they're just big people saying they're God. But it's sort of like the magician. It's sort of like, look over here, look over there. It's how well do you sell it? How well can you sell it? And if you sell it well enough, 80-some% of the people believe. That's what's scary to me. But the other thing I thought about was when the magician baffles us, I still want the ability to have that, try to figure out the trick. And I don't know how you decide that, or anyone would decide that, okay, this person is going to be an idiot and believe it's all magic, supernatural. And there were times, one of my favorite ways of magic happening are when they describe the trick to you and they walk you through it and you're going, yeah, okay, I get it, that's right, that's how they've been doing it. And then they do something unexpected. I love that. But they always call themselves illusionists. How to control whether someone's going to believe in it, I haven't a clue.
Yeah.
Well, it's like you said, you have to have, first off, the willing audience. I've always said that, let's say these psychics, right? Palm readers, people like that, who operate out of, little trailers or wherever they are, right? I've always said, okay, a psychic is going to know two things about you the minute you walk in the door, and they're going to be able to know those two things without even being psychic, which they're not anyway, but that's fine because they can know two things about you right off the bat the minute you walk in the door.
Your sex and your age?
Well, apart from the obviously, the visually obvious. Well, first off, they know that, first off, you're a believer. That's the first thing they know. Skeptics, unbelievers, don't go to see psychics if they have a problem. I mean, if you're guys like us and something's going wrong in your life, well, there may be any number of things you'll try to do to correct that problem, but you don't go to a psychic for a reading, or anything like that. So first thing they know, you're a believer. Second thing they know is that, you're willing to trust them. You're a believer, and you are willing to at least give some credence to what they say, because you're coming to them, for a certain set of needs to be fulfilled.
Right.
And so, just based upon that, it's the audience for people like that does about 90% of the work for them. It's at this point, it's Sylvia Brown or whoever it is. All she is doing is just kind of,
oh, I know. Yeah.
She's just sort of filling in the blanks where this person has, holes in their life that, they're looking to fill with whatever they think the psychic can provide.
With
but it's
her,
that.
I'm always wondering how she does anything with her fingernails.
I've met women with really terrifying nails, and I've watched them type, and I'm like, I don't know how you're doing that, but it's like walking on high heels. Y'all adapt.
That I could do, but
Yeah.
the nails, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most impressive.
It's a chick thing.
Power that she has is that she can
Well, with
function
a
with those talons.
magician, though, I mean, I don't know about y'all. I know that there's been most of the people that I know have played with some form of magic. As a matter of fact, Martin, the trick you were describing with the ring is an old Slidini specialty, and he used to do it on a stage with a room full of people and one person in a chair. And it was all for that one person. I mean, the audience would be like rolling on the floor.
Right.
Because the person's like totally convinced he's making these things. He would take a piece of paper and make it small, and then move it up and down in front of their face, and at the very last minute pop it over their head, and then bring it down, and there's nothing there. And they wouldn't figure it out. It was like, whoa. And it's an easy trick, too. It's one that...
Well, yeah, as long as the whole audience is in on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, I think when you walk into a magic show, though, most of us walk in knowing it's illusion. And part of us are like, part of our brain is going, okay, he's already on tide, he hasn't even gotten in the thing and he's already loose. Or the bag has been closed, okay, he's already going out the other end, and whatever. But the tricks that get us and leave us baffled, there's something that triggers an emotion, a feeling, and a hormone. I don't know.
Well, I think we just, a lot. You want good entertainment. I mean, if you go to a magic show, you want a good show, and so so in a very real sense, I mean, you do know that is what you're getting, and you're impressed. This is probably another aspect of the whole psychology of it too. I think a lot of us have this kind of, whether it's a grudging admiration or a true admiration for people who can kind of hoodwink us in a certain way. We don't like to be hoodwinked when it counts. We don't like to be hoodwinked by thinking,
Well,
oh
no,
God,
we
I voted
don't.
for Bush and here we are. I mean, you don't like to be hoodwinked in that way. But I think that a lot of people have a real admiration for someone who's like, man, I had no idea. I have no idea what you just did with that card, but that was cool.
There's a little bit of that emotion, that feeling, that leads people to things like religion. And that's what I'm...
Yeah, well, there's probably something deeper when you bring religion into it. I mean, I think that everyone has their theories as to.
I don't know. I tried like hell when I was a kid to believe, and because everyone else did. Yeah. Obviously, it was me that was screwed up.
Yeah, so there's the social pressure of it. I think though that this can dovetail again with back to what was being spoken about at TAM. By the Newsweek lady, and I just said her name, and now it's going to because Burke. That's right. She kept using the phrase "human exceptionalism" as a reason for the rampant rejection of science by a lot of the American population. Things like religion pander to and cater to this notion that we are above all of this, that we're better than everything. I think a lot of people are really, really deeply offended by the notion that, well, we're part of nature, we're part of the animal kingdom, we're another primate, we're part of the, we're not, well, the great chain of being thing isn't really true, but, we're all kind of related in this big panoply called nature.
Animal rehab.
A lot of people, religious people don't like that. They don't want to hear that. They want to believe we're exceptional, that we're little angels in training, that God created the universe for us, and He created us to. This is our little training ground to be, angels in the next life and all this. And there's this desire to believe that we are really, really better than we are, but it's a screwy definition of better. It's a definition of better that presumes that, well, there's nothing really good about any of this in the first place. All the good stuff happens after you die. And this planet is just a place where we sort of wipe our feet in preparation for that. So it's not only is it a definition of exceptionalism that says nothing in reality can be exceptional anyway because reality is all base and horrible and nasty. But that's okay because God wants us to be above reality, and this is our testing ground to do this. So it's this weird, very complex sort of soup of ideas that, leads people to just sort of, kind of turn their back on.
I do this a lot of animal rehab, and I see a lot of behavior in animals that is very similar to our behavior. But instead of going, oh, look, isn't he cute? He thinks he's a human. I try to look at the behavior and go, oh, so that's why we do this, right?
I think that there's a lot that can be learned from
animals,
stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, right. I'm going to let you go. I'm sure you have other callers.
Yep.
But thanks, Sue. Yeah.
I'm glad to see you back, and I'm always love seeing the show. And Matt, don't give up. I love you too.
Thanks, Sue.
Thanks, Sue. Yeah.
We appreciate.
Yeah, we're I think a lot like animals in some ways. I kind of I think
we're exactly like animals.
Well, I sort of.
In that we are.
There's a line I draw, like, the big difference between myself and my dogs is I don't eat out of the litter box. But that's.
Have you tried it? Maybe they're onto something.
Yeah, but I kind of like my food spicy and not, sort of not soft.
Tabasco.
Yeah.
No?
I'll think it over.
I tell you what, let's just go to Kyle rather than getting gross. How you doing, Kyle?
I'm doing good. How are y'all doing today?
We're fine.
I just thought I'd call in because, you're talking about how, critical thinking isn't taught in the schools anymore. And I actually graduated back in 2005. And just really, there was only one teacher that really kind of taught us critical thinking. And that was, my chemistry class. We were given the whole spiel of, we were given this dangerous molecule, dihydrogen monoxide, and how people drown in it, and that it's
it's in styrofoam cups, and we should ban those because of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And she actually thought the results that many people said that we should ban water. And it kind of makes you critically think about these things.
Yeah. That reminds me of the time when, occasionally Leno will go out on the street and with really obvious questions and ask people and find out how dumb they are. Something like, I remember one Tonight Show where he said something like, he was asking people, okay, do you have a cranium? and half the people were just sort of like, I'm not sure. Is that like...
While scratching it.
Is that like in your spleen or something? That's hilarious. The guys on the Man Show, of all offensive television programs ever, which we all love, but they went out and got a bunch of women on the street to sign a petition to against women's suffrage.
Yes.
Yeah. So just not quite knowing suffrage.
It sounds really bad.
Yeah. Suffrage sounds like a bad thing. I certainly don't like the suffrage. So that kind of people just don't.
So how detailed did your chemistry teacher get? I mean, how much benefit did you really get? And was it part of the curriculum or just something that this was a good teacher who decided?
Was it just an example of the way in which people don't know fundamental things?
Yeah, she kind of tied it in to the whole idea in chemistry of the phlogiston theory, all things burn because of phlogiston. She kind of tied it into that, it was a commonly held belief at the time.
Hey, I just did something really sexist, didn't I? I assumed that his chemistry teacher was a man, and it wasn't.
No, it was actually a woman.
I know. Well, see, that I'm saying I was being sexist without even thinking about it. But that's an important point. Once upon a time, I'd have never noticed. And it's the same thing that I see among other people who
I didn't notice that you just
bigots or racist or sexist or things like that. The thing that you have to do, in addition to my position on caring about whether or not my beliefs are true, is actually think about what you're thinking. Richard Dawkins talking about raising the
consciousness
to women's rights issues and things like that. I do that, and the fact that I caught it right off the bat taught me.
Because all of us are programmed with certain ideas from our cultural upbringing.
Yeah,
and it's a lot of work to get over a bunch of that. I made a similar mistake one time when I was host. I just casually tossed off some comment about I don't know, some. I think may have been some evangelist that I found incredibly offensive, and I think I described him as fat and ugly. And we had one of our group members at the time, good friend of mine, really nice guy. But he emailed me after the show, a very nice email, not, raking me over the coals or anything, just objecting to my joining of those two adjectives, right? Fat with ugly. And he's like, okay, I'm fat, and here's the thing that fat people have to put up with all the time. This sort of automatic, this cultural assumption that, if you gotta be thin as a rail to look good, and
Right.
so if you're overweight, then there's the assumption of ugliness, and these are ideas that, and I just realized, I just said it. I just said it without thinking about it.
There's no malicious intent. There wasn't
Yeah.
intent a minute ago. We're all a product of our cultures. We all have prejudices, biases. The thing is to try to teach yourself to recognize them when they happen, so that maybe, I don't think we're ever going to completely stop, but maybe you can avoid the future. But I completely interrupted what Kyle was saying, so go back to telling us about your chemistry teacher.
Oh, it's okay. It's y'all show so. But anyways, just tying into the whole phlogiston theory, scientific method, testing, what is put out there. Can things be falsified? Can you at least test it? And that's kind of one of the things that that's kind of stuck with me and kind of stopped me from buying into a lot of the fads that are put out in front of people. Like, just name the fad that's been put out in front of people my age, 21, and I've pretty much avoided all the people wanting to go to listen to rap music. Like, they're like, oh, everybody likes it, so you gotta like it. I'm like, no, I honestly don't like it. I can't understand a single word they're saying in their lyrics. I mean, the beat's catchy, but that's about it, and that's called techno, so I just listen to techno, I guess.
There you go, yeah. Well, I'll give you a good example of one that a lot of people have, and this, again, dovetails back with the TAM report. One of the things that was shown at TAM was the pilot episode of a program called The Skeptologists, which Michael Shermer and Phil Plait and Steve Novella and all these guys have gotten involved.
Man.
Yes. And they are they're pitching this right now to them, so it's not on, but it's they've shot a pilot, and so they're now pitching the program to and it's just, again, skeptical investigation of claims, right? And so there was one, I think, haunted house investigation, and the other thing that they checked up on was wheatgrass juice. This is a big health food fad, wheatgrass juice, and the Whole Foods crowd, just goes nuts over this, and the claims are that it's a superfood, that it's just packed full of all these nutrients, and it also contains chlorophyll, which is really, plants use chlorophyll, and it's good for plants, so, we get some of that in us, and, it's good for us. And, of course, they went and, to a health food store and tested some of this stuff, and it was kind of funny there. But then they had the group of them around trying it out, and Steve Novella, who is the doctor, essentially says, okay, well, it's not a superfood. It's actually a very poor food, poor in nutrients. It has almost no beta-carotene. It has almost none, very little. You do much better just going and buying apples and oranges and fruits and vegetables just for your essential vitamin content. But this wheatgrass, it's a very poor food in terms of the nutrients. That's why cows have to eat so much, because you don't really get that much benefit out of it. And as for the chlorophyll content, well, we're not plants, So the chlorophyll just sort of, it gets in our body and it disperses. But what the claim of the health food store owner was when he was letting them sample all this stuff was that the body, he said, it converts the chlorophyll to hemoglobin, which is, this thing in our body. And it's like, that's the stupidest thing ever. I mean, you could drink an actual cup of blood with hemoglobin in it, and the body would not absorb that and process that as new hemoglobin. But the chlorophyll itself, it just dissipates when it gets into our system. You just pee it right out. So ultimately, it's just, but again, it's a fad. It has a whole bunch of pseudoscientific claims attached to it. And you go to Whole Foods, they'll sell you a shot for $2.50, and that's really what it's all about. So these.
And it tastes
fads,
it tastes like grass.
Yeah.
And I haven't wanted to chew grass since I was a little kid.
Yeah. Well, Phil Plait said on the show, he's like, I would rather lick a squirrel's armpit than drink another cup of this stuff. It's that apparently nasty. I've never had it, but I've had friends who are just nuts over it, and I could just look at it and tell, I don't want to drink anything that green. It just seemed weird to me. So you're right, but, because people aren't armed with the facts beforehand, then they'll just accept what they hear, if what they hear sort of, I think, satisfies or flatters a preconceived idea that they might have.
I think one of the best things is that you're 3 years out of high school now?
I'm 21, probably about 3 years, yeah.
Yeah. And yet, I don't know how many of your other teachers you remember in detail, but you remember this one teacher who actually took the time to perhaps teach something that you benefit from on a daily basis that wasn't part of the curriculum.
Yeah. And then, but the best part of all is a chemistry class, you know, why wasn't I learning this in English or most of all physics or any other class?
Why did you learn it in kindergarten?
Yeah.
No way. I mean, I agree there. All they taught us in kindergarten was to share and, you know, even though you've had that toy and everything, it's time for you to give it up for someone else. You know, but just, you know, one other thing, you know, for anybody who wants to think skeptical about a lot of stuff, I mean, just to see how a lot of these fads are brought into being and everything, I recommend a book by Edward Bernays called Propaganda, and it gets into how, you know, you manipulate mass psychology and everything, and how a lot of these fads or a lot of ideas that are accepted as conventional wisdom are brought into, you know, being. It's very important, I think. I think, you know, it fits everything that I've ever seen.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks.
Thanks a lot, Kyle. Appreciate the call.
Yeah, appreciate
Thank
it very
you.
much. Stay in touch.
There's a lot of other similar books. I mean, you know, of course, I was talking about getting Carl Sagan's Demon Haunted World in as required reading, but you talked about Mike Shermer at the TAM 6, who also written a number of books, including Why People Believe Weird Things. James Randy's got a
He's
bunch
doing a
of them.
follow-up on that right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, new book. The book table at TAM is an amazing thing to behold if you're really looking to build a library of your skeptical literature. Shermer's new book seems kind of... Shermer was actually better than he usually is when I've seen him speak before at this year's TAM. And I think he talked a lot... his new book is all about how people... why people believe unseen things. I don't know if that'll actually be the title. But it's this notion of, you know, why we're willing to sort of, again, fill these gaps in our reality with these concepts that I think sort of flatter our notion that there really needs to kind of be some control here. You know, this whole idea that reality doesn't make sense as some sort of self-organizing natural process. You know, it kind of fits in with our natures as pattern-seeking animals to think of, no, well, there's actually some sort of a top-down design working rather than sort of a bottom-up kind of thing going on. And he says he's developing this idea. He hadn't fully developed it, but I thought it was kind of interesting to hear the basis of it. Like, just as a lot of religious believers employ the God of the gaps to sort of, you know, where they're scientifically illiterate, they'll just, well, God makes more sense. Well, God did it. That just... He said that there are certain schools of political thought where he calls it government of the gaps. And it's the same kind of argument of ignorance, or from ignorance, where he says, well, I can't imagine how these certain social problems will fix themselves, so we need the government to come in and fix them for us. And maybe it's this too much trust on the part of perhaps people of a certain political bent to, you know, trust in bureaucracies that we already know or have failed and are failed us before.
May not have any better mechanism for fixing the problem.
So it's he said he hadn't fully developed the idea, and he wants to work on it some more. But it seems like it'll be a pretty interesting read. But again, all the more reason to go. I would love to see all of the Austin Atheist community there next year, because it really is worth it. You know, you'll end up forking over a couple grand for the whole trip in the end, but it's be an experience that's worthwhile.
There's one thing that I'd kind of like to touch on, because we spent a lot of time, as I would imagine, a good deal of time was spent at TAM 6, not necessarily by the speakers, but certainly by a lot of the people who went, since I know some of them, bashing religion. And there's something, a couple of the emails that came in this week would start with something, I'm not an atheist, but.
Or I am an atheist, but. Or
I'm not a Christian, but. And then go on. And in one case it was, I'm not a Christian, but I disagree with you on this point, and here's my argument. Well, I don't care about the first part at all.
Sure.
Unless your views of Christianity are relevant to the topic at hand, it doesn't matter. And starting off by saying you are an atheist, but you disagree with me on a certain point, that carries no weight either. And so I'm a huge advocate of critical thinking and skepticism, but we are bad at it, all of us. I'm no exception. Martin's no exception. Neither are any of the speakers at TAM. We're all prone to making big mistakes. And there's one mistake that I'd like to kind of caution some people on. There are many of us who have come to the realization that the religious claims simply don't hold up. The evidence to support those claims does not exist, is often contradictory of things that we already know and understand about reality, is contradictory of itself in many occasions. And so our critical thinking and skepticism have led us to I'll go ahead and say conclusion, but I'll stress that any positions that we hold should always be tentative based on the possibility of new evidence or contradicting evidence. The thing that I want to caution people against is once you have established, even tentatively, that religious claims are bunk, you need to be careful that you don't just start uncritically accepting arguments against particular religions because they're consistent with what you already believe. And we touched on this about a million times, and that one prime example is Zeitgeist and a number of these other little films and pieces of films that build up a story about how Jesus was just this latest astrological incarnation mythical story. Yeah. It is true that Jesus may not have actually existed. We have no evidence either way, but it seems that once you get to the point where your critical thinking has led you to reject a particular claim, doctrine, system, belief, whatever, you may become more prone to simply saying, "Oh, well, that makes so much sense. I already know it's not true. I'm already convinced of that. So this other claim that says it's not true, that says it's actually this, that makes sense to me, and I don't have to think too much about it."
Right, and I think that's probably where a lot of the critics of the new atheism get this notion of atheist fundamentalists and dogmatic atheists. And you do need to approach each individual claim simply based on the merits of that claim.
Yeah,
there's just a commentary recently. There's a little comment thread on the AE blog just this week where this whole question of Jesus as a real person came up, and I stated very plainly, look, I'm perfectly willing to entertain the notion that the character of Jesus as portrayed in the Gospels could very well have been based on an actual human. I don't find that completely outside the realm of plausibility. Do we have any direct extra biblical, easy to confirm historical evidence of who that person was? Was his name really Jesus or Yeshua or whatever? We don't really have that. But I'm entirely willing to, accept the idea, sure, a real person probably could have inspired this character, maybe even done a few of the things that that Jesus is said to do in the Gospels. I don't think the walking on the water and the loaves and fishes stuff, coming back from the dead, probably not. But this whole, but I do encounter a whole lot of atheists who are just sort of like, Jesus never existed. And I'm like, well, again, we can't know either way.
I'm fine with people who've come to that conclusion for certain reasons.
Well, if they can argue for it.
My cautionary, or my warning is don't ever drop your ability to look at a situation critically, to be skeptical, to examine it, just because it happens to already agree with something, one of your preconceived notions. Because when you do that, this is going to sound conceited, and I think it's fair that I be conceited and arrogant towards the atheist community on occasion, as I'm accused of doing it towards the religious community as well. When you do that, you make the rest of us look bad, because you run around on the internet saying, "Oh, here's my video, and look, Jesus was just, raw, part 2, or whatever kind of crap you want to throw out there," and you destroy the work that other people are actually doing. You destroy the ability, because those types of things get this kind of pop culture popularity, get passed around, viral videos, and all of a sudden, real thinking believers think that this is the best argument. Think that this is why people are atheists, because they've bought into this. So then some Christian comes along and debunks the points made in there, and now all of a sudden you've left somebody more confused because you've overstated the case. You've made a claim that you can't back up, and that it turns out is not an accurate representation of what's going on. Yeah. Now, all right, that's enough, bitch.
I think you make a fair point. I think that a lot of the reason why it's only a very recent phenomenon that you've seen atheists get together in like little groups like ours, and you've seen conventions like TAM and what have you, It has been difficult to corral atheists into that sort of thing, largely because I think many of us want to avoid even the appearance of any kind of groupthink.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that is because, it's very easy, even if you're someone who considers yourself a rationalist, to think about it. Get in a big room full of a whole bunch of people who think Christianity is full of crap, and you can just sort of feed off of that, and it does become... Now, to be fair, I didn't obviously hang out with every little clique at TAM, but, so the folks I hung out with, it wasn't really all about, boy, aren't Christians stupid, ha ha ha, aren't we smart, ha ha ha.
No, I wouldn't have imagined that.
But, it's, but... Yeah, I know that there are probably, there is that little coterie of atheists out there who do that kind of thing. And you're right, it's always better to just sort of be level-headed and even-keeled about the whole thing.
Yeah.
And
I'm guilty as well. It's it's like one of those things where, I immediately caught, or relatively quickly caught, that I was being kind of sexist in a presumption. I've overstated cases before, and that's one of the reasons why it bugs me, is because I can't stand to be so wrong, so unjustified in a position. It's one of the reasons why I keep doing this, because I believed something without justification for bad reasons, based on logical fallacies and emotional appeals for so long that I have almost no tolerance for that. But I'm still happy to talk to people and try and have a conversation, because I recognize we all see things slightly differently. Mm-hmm. Not everybody has taken the same steps towards, let's do everything we can to get to the truth without poisoning the well, I guess. But
well said, sir.
We got about
4 minutes and 2 very patient callers.
Yeah, and
Sorry.
I can't guarantee that we'll get to both of them, but we'll try. As a reminder, we will be going to Threadgill's after the show today. We've moved. Threadgill's 301 West Riverside Drive. We're on the air for another 3 minutes or so.
And you can send emails to the TV email address if we don't get to your question on the air, too.
TV at atheist-community.org. I'm sure they'll put it up again. Let's get to, is it Bill?
Hello.
Hi,
doing,
sorry
Bill?
to keep you waiting.
I was coming out of the VA outpatient clinic, and it was raining, and I was surrounded by 3 Christians. They were all wearing crosses. Mm-hmm. And on my hat, which I've shown to Matt, I'm proud to be an atheist. I'm a golfer. And the question came up, where did I come from? And I said, my mother and father. And they said, where did they come from? And they all said, no, you came from God. And so how do I respond to them? Does God have a DNA? If he does, then that'll be proof there's a God.
There you go.
Yeah, just ask them, okay, where did he come from? And they'll probably come up with a whole lot of canned excuses.
I'd like to take a look at chromosome 2 in God's DNA, please.
Yes.
Well, I guess if they actually took the DNA, it would show that they didn't come from their parents, huh? Okay, that's stupid, but I didn't know how to respond to their...
And just say, and where did God come from?
Yeah.
Oh, I should have said that, huh?
Yeah, just a simple one.
I got to let you go, Bill, but we appreciate the call. We only have 30 seconds left. Thanks for calling in.
Thanks so much.
To all the crew, and hey, you can switch over. There's some of the crew.
Yes, there they are. Hey, boys.
Those are the ones who did the fancy camera moves. We didn't have a show last week, which I forgot to mention. Last week's show was a screw-up in scheduling, but we are scheduled to be on again next week, so we'll see you all then. Join us at Threadgill. Send us an email at tv@atheist-community.org. Thanks to Martin for finally showing up, and we'll see you all next week.